Joining us now is James Billow, newsroom editor at Unheard. James, it's great to see you again. Let's start with this meeting between Donald Trump and Keir Starmer, because for all the things we can criticise Donald Trump for, I think this meeting really shines the light on who's a strong leader and who's a weak one. In 6 months, Donald Trump has closed the border. He's been carrying out his promise of deporting illegals. Meanwhile, illegal immigration in the UK is out of control. And Starmer was asked about this and he was panicking when that topic came up. But he also started to panic when it came to the topic of free speech. Take a listen.
The importance of free speech today?
Well, free speech is very important. I don't know if you're referring to any place in particular. Perhaps they are, but
we've had free speech for a very, very long time here, so we're very proud about that.
He says that, yet Keir Starmer has approved an elite police task force to track online posts about immigration. So detectives will be taken from forces across the UK to take part in a new investigations unit which aims to maximise social media intelligence as the government aims to avoid riots. But of course, many are concerned about this and how this could lead to restrictions of free speech, James.
Yeah, and it's a pretty interesting use of the words elite. I don't exactly know what kind of elite team would be used to be monitoring social media for anti-migrant rhetoric. It's just bizarre. I just want to pull out one of the comments that Starmer made in that slightly awkward press conference he had with Trump. He said, Britain has a long history of free speech. And yes, that's entirely true, but it can go in the blink of an eye. And that is what appears to be happening at the moment. It is not an effective use of police resources to be investigating this kind of behavior. It's something we saw during COVID when they were flying out drones to break up people having picnics. And now this kind of nanny statism seems to be accelerating and rolling onto online discourse and things like that. So, yeah, I think it's a very troubling indictment on the state of free speech in Britain. And I can only hope that someone at some stage will have the courage to intervene.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been, pointed out that Britain's two-tier justice system means that you can get more jail time for an ill-judged tweet than for some of the worst offences imaginable. The Telegraph had this piece highlighting that rapists, pedophiles and terror offenders have been given shorter sentences than Lucy Connelly, who is, of course, the woman who was sentenced to 31 months in jail for an awful tweet that she deleted. I just don't know how it's possible for some of the worst offenders to be getting lighter sentences than Lucy Connelly, someone who wrote an awful post on social media.
Well, 31 months for a single tweet is actually beyond parody. And yeah, it's an extremely troubling step in the direction of Britain's free speech travel. I'd also note that at the start of Keir Starmer's term, he was the one that released about 2,000 prisoners because of overcrowding. Well, here's an idea, Keir. Why don't you let someone like Lucy Connelly go instead of 2 or 3 of these rapists that have already got out? Otherwise, it was from a separate scheme, but still, the fact that some of these serious offenders are only serving sentences of up to 2 years is just extraordinary. And by the way, Lucy Connelly was not the only one to have been investigated for such a tweet. We had a police constable, retired police constable, who had received a knock on the door by a few police officers, and all that they could find were some very Brexity things on his bookshelf, and he was left with a slap on the wrist. But it's just extraordinary to see where police resources are being directed and what kind of two-tier system we have here.
Well, it makes a lot of sense that Nigel Farage is ahead in the polls. Recent polls show that his party Reform is ahead with 28.4%, and Labor has sunk to 23.9%, while the Tories are on 18%. Now, Donald Trump in that meeting with Keir Starmer today seemed to put Keir Starmer on notice. Just take a listen.
And, politics is pretty simple. I assume there's a thing going on between you and Nigel, and it's okay, it's 2 parties. But generally speaking, the one who cuts taxes the most, the one who gives you the lowest energy prices and the best kind of energy, the one that keeps you out of wars, he's kept you out of wars, but the one that keeps you out of wars, you have a few basics, and you can go back 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, whoever does these things, but low taxes, keep us safe, keep us out of wars, no crime, stop the crime, and in your case, a big immigration component, because I know that your attitude has become strong on immigration, strong on the toughness of immigration. But I think whoever's going to be, I think I won because I think I won because we had a lousy precedent, to be honest with you.
Look at how uncomfortable Keir Starmer is there. Well, Donald Trump is actually helping him out. But also, if you kind of read between the lines, he's saying, really, if as long as Nigel Farage and Reform stay focused on immigration and slashing the cost of living, well, they could be on track to win the next election.
Right. And to tell you the truth, all those topics that he listed are pretty much the platform of Reform. They're almost the anti-platform of Labour by contrast. And it has been quite a stunning ascendancy for Nigel Farage. Ever since Keir Starmer came into power, his lead has ever so gradually eroded and then quite spectacularly fallen off in the last few months. So, yeah, the person who had benefited most from this was Nigel Farage. And we had the Southport stabbings, which again really tickled the imagination of the British public about the state of immigration in the country. We are having serious issues with net zero at the moment, and he is a big critic of that. And yeah, he is one of the few politicians that will openly say we need to close the borders and just figure out what's going on here first. A lot of politicians have slowly caught up to speed, but I think voters are craving authenticity here. And it's not just Starmer, by the way. We had 14 years of Tory rule before then. Very little was achieved. And in fact, immigration surged under Boris Johnson, one of the British prime ministers. And it seems like Farage is the only one untainted by the history of government, and he might be the one to come and sort it out.
Well, over the weekend, Donald Trump slammed European leaders over mass migration as well, while also bragging about his shutting of the US-Mexico border, which he has every right to do. And Donald Trump warned that mass migration is killing the continent. Let's take a listen.
Stop the windmills. And I mean, there's a couple of things I could say, but on immigration, you better get your act together. You're not going to have Europe anymore. You got to get your act together. And we, as you know, last month we had nobody entering our country, nobody. Shut it down. And we took out a lot of bad people that got there with Biden. Biden was a total stiff. And what he allowed to happen, but you're allowing it to happen to your countries. And you got to stop this horrible invasion that's happening to Europe, many countries in Europe. Some leaders have not let it happen. And they're not getting the proper credit they should. I could name them to you right now, but I'm not going to embarrass the other ones. But stop. This immigration is killing Europe.
James, he's pretty on point there. And of course, looking at his track record in the space of just 6 months, being able to shut the border is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely. I would say that was actually and has been his biggest success in office. It has been completely unambiguous. Europe, by contrast, is struggling. It's plagued by bureaucratic gridlock, and it always ends up following the path of least resistance, which means kicking the problem into the long grass and leading up to future leaders to sort out. Now, there has been some rhetorical change about dealing with the immigration issue across the bloc, but again, very little is being done, not enough. Just as a quick sidebar, there is one country, and Trump probably wouldn't have mentioned it, but it's the only country in Europe that has had a successful centre-left government throughout this whole period. And that is because it has been tough on immigration. It has strict integration rules, strict asylum rules, and strict immigration rules. And that is the recipe for success in Europe, and other leaders should just follow it.
I want to get your thoughts on the trade deal with the EU. Donald Trump needed 75 minutes to secure his desired outcome from the European Union. The early deal said that Europe will invest $600 billion, buy $750 billion in American energy supplies, and the majority of European goods entering the US now have 15% tariff. Now, President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, also remarked how Donald Trump was a tough negotiator.
To thank President Trump personally for his personal commitment and leadership to achieve this breakthrough. He's a tough negotiator, but he is also a deal maker.
It's interesting because Donald Trump has shown many experts who were freaking out at the time about the tariffs and what this could mean, a lot of hysteria about what's going to happen to the economy. I suppose this was part of the deal. What's your take on this?
Well, that clip of Ursula von der Leyen, it looked more like a hostage video than one of a politician celebrating a deal. And in some respects, that's exactly what it was. The EU are undoubtedly the losers from this deal. Not only have they has the US just secured a 15% tariff rate on the bloc, but it has also promised to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in investment in US military equipment. So this has been an unambiguous success for Donald Trump as well. And while von der Leyen might say, oh, well, this is a good deal, we're happy we got it over the line, a lot of other European leaders were not so happy. We had France's PM, Francis Bayrou, say this was a dark day for Europe. And then Viktor Orban of Hungary saying that Trump ate the EU for breakfast. So very mixed results here. And I don't think Ursula von der Leyen will be going to sleep very easily tonight.
Just finally, before I let you go, Donald Trump also had this to say about windmills, saying they are a con job.
The other thing I say to Europe, we will not allow a windmill to be built in the United States. They're killing us. They're killing the beauty of our scenery, our valleys, our beautiful plains, and I'm not talking about airplanes, I'm talking about beautiful plains, beautiful areas in the United States, and you look up and you see windmills all over the place. It's a horrible thing. It's the most expensive form of energy. It's no good. They're made in China, almost all of them. When they start to rust and rot in 8 years, you can't really turn them off. You can't bury them. They won't let you bury the propellers, you know, the props, because there's a certain type of fiber that doesn't go well with the land. That's what they say. The environmentalists say you can't bury them because the fiber doesn't go well with the land. In other words, if you bury it, it will harm our soil. The whole thing is a con job. It's very expensive.
He's certainly landed some punches, James.
Donald Trump's antipathy for windmills goes back a long way. And look, I'm not necessarily anti-green energy, but I completely agree with the fact that it cannot be the sole source of energy for any nation. And this is where the West seems to be really tying one hand behind its back, because it has to be supported by other types of energy. And America, it's self-sufficient, it's energy independent, it's less of a problem for them. But in countries like Germany that have suffered so much over the last 3 years because it has turned off its nuclear power plants, it has now had to rely on other countries to provide its power. So I think when you have the wars like Russia going on, what's going on in Ukraine, driving up these electricity prices, you cannot rely on windmills who, yes, the energy powers are intermittent and the recycling ability is actually pretty low. So in some respects, Donald Trump is exactly right there. And I think Europe can once again take a lesson from him on that.
James Billow, newsroom editor at Unheard, thank you so much for joining us. Really great to speak with you.
Thank you.